Dan Wynn and Jason Minix talk exclusively with the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, Jason Garrett. Powered by AA Best Bail Bonds. MyBestBailBonds.com.
Jason Garrett joining us. And, Coach, let's get right into it. Under 3 minutes left in the game, up by 5 points. Most teams in the NFL run. Why pass?
Well, I think the biggest thing we had to do at that point in the ball game is try to maintain possession of the football and drive the football. You certainly want to run the ball there and give them opportunities to use their timeouts and keep that clock going. And we had a couple runs that were up there. We had one of the runs that ended up being a pass for us, and they ended up making a play on it. And it was unfortunate for us. We didn't execute the play the way we needed to, and they made a play, and that was a significant part of the game.
You alluded to calling a run but having a pass. So is that Romo kind of seeing what's going on at the line of scrimmage and adapting, and why does he have the ability to do that under those circumstances?
Well, as you know, teams will play a lot of kinds of run defense in different situations, and throughout that ball game they played a lot of run defense, and you saw us able to move the football, fairly effectively, throwing it through the air. We actually ran the ball well, also by using our formations and kind of getting a more favorable run look against that run defense. Towards the end of the ball game, they had too many guys around the line of scrimmage, and that's something that's built into one of the runs that we had, and Tony went with it. And in hindsight, it was not the right decision. We should have just run the ball up in there, even though we didn't have a very favorable look. There certainly was desire by our football team on offense to move the ball. If you watch the game, they had 5 possessions in the second half, and they scored touchdowns in every one of them. So the idea that we're going to sit there and try to run it 3 times and punt it, I don't think was necessarily the right approach. We certainly wanted to run the football and use some clock, but we also had to make sure we were doing stuff that was effective and gaining first downs to keep the ball away from them, because they had been so effective. Again, having watched the game, I think they had scored on their first 4 possessions, all of which were touchdowns.
Coach, coming into the season this year, Coach, Tony was going to be more involved in the play calling and more involved in the game plan. Does Tony Romo now have the ability to change every play?
No, Dad, the concept that we're talking about is when you have a run called and you have an out with one of the receivers based on what the run look is. We call them smokes or flashes. Every team in the league does it. Sometimes you get overloaded. It's not necessarily an audible as much as it is a way for him to get out of the play, at moment's notice. Sometimes they'll bring extra safeties down and they'll overload the particular area, and you don't have time enough to get out of the play, and you'll answer it with that smoke or a flash. And like I said, you see it around the league every week, and it's certainly a very favorable way to implement your attack to get you into a good, favorable play. In that situation, Tony would be the first to tell you that was the wrong decision to do that, even though that was part of that play. He should have just handed the ball off, and that was an important play in the ball game, obviously. It gave them a short field with a chance to go ahead in the game.
Jason Garrett, Cowboy coach, joining us here on the Blitz 1250 ESPN San Antonio. Coach, in that sequence, certainly I can see why you guys would have passed, because the Green Bay, as you said, had scored 4 touchdowns on 4 possessions, and you want to do everything you can to not give them the ball back. But not just that specific play, but in general in the second half, DeMarco Murray was averaging 7.5 yards a carry. You were also passing it somewhat effectively, but you were running it very, very well. In general, when you look back at it, do you think you should have ran more often in the second half?
Yeah, I think we should have had more balance in the second half, no question about that. And I think you can point to a couple different sequences. There was a 3-and-out that we had, where we had a drop ball and another, a high percentage throw that wasn't converted. They got us into a 3rd and 10 that we ended up having a sack on. That was a bad sequence for us right at the beginning of right at the end of the third quarter. So that was a circumstance you would say, let's run it a little bit more. But we had thrown the ball very effectively and moved the ball up and down the field really throughout the game and felt good about that. But, one of the best things we did in the first half was have that balance. And I think, when we look back on it, we'd like to have more balance in the second half, because it was effective. It wasn't like we were running the football and and it wasn't good for us. We had run it very effectively, and having that balance, gives you more opportunities in the passing game. And you can look back at a couple different sequences and say, hey, if we had to do that over again, maybe run it a little bit more here or there. One of the things that they did a much better job of, obviously, in the second half is they stayed on the field. So that limited some of our opportunities. I think we had 4 possessions up until that last sequence that we were talking about earlier. So sometimes that contributes to it as well. But balance is certainly a good thing for our team, and we definitely had an opportunity to be more balanced in the second half.
Jason Garrett joining us. Coach, the Cowboys this year, 4th in the league in scoring in points per game, 28 points per game. I mean, you look at the balance, quote unquote, that you've had this year, it hasn't really been there, but yet you're scoring 28 points a game. So, I mean, within your offense, is balance kind of maximizing your team's ability to score points?
Well, I think balance is good for us. There's no question about that. I think you saw that yesterday when you have that kind of success. I think we had north of 450 yards of offense, and we ran it well, and we threw it well, and I think that reflected in points. And I think when we look at that game yesterday, you say there were probably too many times on drives where we got bogged down in that fringe area of the field and had to kick field goals. Dan Bailey had a fantastic day. 9 touchbacks, kicked 5 field goals in the game, 2 of which were 50 yards. But you say, boy, we'd rather have those be touchdown opportunities. And that's one of the best things we've done this year is, we've scored points when we're down in the red zone. A couple times yesterday when we're just outside of the red zone, you'd like to see us get a couple more touchdown chances. The other thing that our defense has done a very good job of is taking the ball away. So that certainly contributed to, our success scoring points. We've got a number of short fields, a number of returns for touchdowns, and those things are all very positive. But you're always trying to find ways to move the football and score points. That's line one, and we found we're most effective when we're balanced. It helps our offensive line. It helps our quarterback. It gets you some favorable coverage to throw the ball into, and it certainly would help our defense.
Coach, as a former player, when you lose close game, especially late in this season, players usually start talking in small groups and about coaches, about play calling. How are you planning to address that with your team?
Oh, I think you address that by the guys you have on your football team. And, you start with having the right kind of guys. And, the right kind of guys are on your team for a lot of different reasons. But they're on your teams maybe more than anything else to deal with adverse circumstances that you come across over the course of the season. And, teams are going to lose games. You're going to have tough losses. You're going to have different kinds of adversity, whether it's injuries or whatever those things might be over the course of 16 weeks that you're going to have to deal with. And if you have the right kind of guys, typically you deal with them the right way. That's not to say that everybody's perfect. People are disappointed, frustrated, all those things. But typically, if you have the right kind of guys, they'll handle it the right way. They'll somehow, some way take some accountability for what happened in the ball game individually. That's a good thing. Everybody's a part of that loss yesterday, coaches, players, and everybody. And you see what you can do better, and then you move forward and get ready for the next challenge.
Cowboy coach Jason Garrett with us here on the Blitz, 1250 ESPN San Antonio. Des Bryant left the field before the game was over yesterday. What was your reaction to that?
Well, we talked to Des about it, and, Des is one of the great competitors I've ever been around. And, he just told me flat out, Coach, I was getting emotional. I had a really hard time watching them take a knee on our field in a game that we should have won. And I didn't want to, I knew cameras were out on the sidelines, and I just felt like I needed to get away from that. And, I just talked to him, very, very straight and very point blank and said, you can't handle that situation like that. And he understands that, and he needs to be out there, needs to handle it just like everybody else needs to handle it. And, he'll learn from that experience. Again, certainly well-intended. Again, one of the great competitors, one of the great teammates I've ever been around. The guy loves our football team and everything about it and does everything he can to help our team. And, just an emotional situation for him that he thought that was the best way to handle it, and he'll handle it differently in the future.
Coach Jason Garrett joins us each and every Monday between 4 and 5, brought to you by AA Best Bail Bonds or online mybestbailbonds.com. You're in a unique position, Coach, having played quarterback in the NFL. So what does a former quarterback head coach say to his quarterback, Tony Romo, after that type of a game?
Well, first of all, you try to recognize all the good things that he did, and he did a ton of good things in that ball game. We moved the ball very effectively throughout the game, and he was a big part of that, throwing the ball, and then you address the situational things that happened in the game, both good and bad. Before the half, a really good 2-minute drive, and at other times during the ball game, some decisions that he made probably weren't the right decisions, and he'll learn from that. Regardless of how long you play this game, you're going to learn every time you go out there, and I learned that from some really good players who I had the good fortune to play with, and I heard that many times from them. And Tony has to learn from this situation, learn how to handle that situation at the end of the game better, and I'm confident that he will going forward. But you recognize the good, you address some of the things that aren't good, you get them corrected, and you get ready for the next challenge. You get your eyes forward to a week of preparation for the Redskins up there at RFK this week.
You're talking about the Redskins and moving forward. Can you update us on the injuries of yesterday, Coach?
Justin Durant re-injured his hamstring. It's a hamstring that he was out for a couple weeks. So, we'll see how he is, as this week progresses. Ernie Sims hurt his kind of hip area, and we're still waiting to hear back on that. I'm trying to think of some other guys that, typically that linebacker thing was the most glaring thing for us. We lost both those veteran players. That certainly had an impact on the game. So that's what's been on our mind. Can you think of anybody else?
I can't think of anybody else. Those are the two in linebackers.
That sounds like enough.
Coach, before we let you go, the second interception that Tony Romo had, Cole Beasley came out and said after the game, basically he ran the wrong route. He didn't finish the route. Is that what happened on that play? Was that just Beasley should have kept running there?
Well, I think as much as anything else, it was Cole and Tony just being on the same page and seeing the coverage the same way. It was a two-deep coverage with a somewhat soft corner, and you saw Cole catch one a little bit earlier in the ball game where that corner stayed soft and he came out of it. If that corner plays a little bit firmer, plays a little bit closer down to the line of scrimmage, he comes out of the break and just kind of idles out of it, and Tony puts the ball on him. So, it was just a matter of those guys seeing it together. I think both those guys are a part of that thing, and it's just recognition together of what the defense is playing and how they're playing it.
Cowboys head coach Jason Garrett, thanks for the time today, Coach. Good luck next week.
Okay, guys. Always enjoy it. Have a good week.
Coach. You too. Great stuff. Jason Garrett, head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, joining us each and every Monday between 4 and 4:30. Brought to you by AA Best Bail Bonds, 225-2121, or online at mybestbailbonds.com.
Get the latest on your Dallas Cowboys. Jason Garrett, Mondays at 4:30. Powered by AA Best Bail Bonds. mybestbailbonds.com.